Okay, so welcome to our podcast. Today
Thank you.
we are talking about veganism with Iva. So maybe first you could shortly introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, thank you for inviting me. My name is Iva. I have been vegan since I was 16. In my everyday life, I'm employed at Zavod Moja Mavriča, and I also try to do as many local types of activism as possible.
Oh wow, that's really nice. To start off, how would you actually describe your current vegan lifestyle? Do you think you would say you have a particular emotional relationship with veganism, or is it political, or what do you think about?
This actually changed a lot over time. I would say that my initial relationship to veganism was mainly emotional and political, in the sense that I was actually very motivated to go for a plant-based food because of the health reasons, but also because of the animal exploitation, and which later then also I adopted more of a holistic veganism, in a sense that they also try to take care of what kind of materials are the stuff made of that they use, and which cosmetic products, for example, are made by companies who also test on animals and things like this. So this is maybe how I view a little bit the difference between just plant-based eating and veganism as a lifestyle and as a political movement.
Yeah. And what about if you think about veganism as a word? What comes to your mind? Is there any like images or stereotypes or anything?
The image in my mind is very green. I would say that I mean, I view veganism as a political movement. So, also as I gave the example before, that it's not just about what the food we eat, but also to think generally about the way that we approach animals and the way that we approach our own role in relation to animals, and also, yeah, to take care of things like which kind of products we use and what kind of food we eat, but also maybe within the food that we eat, what kind of production processes are more or less harmful to other non-human beings.
How about, do you remember when you first considered going vegan? What was the motivation?
I do very vividly remember, actually. I have a younger brother, 2 years younger, who, when he was small, he really, really cared about animals and wanted to learn everything about animals. And when he was 4, so I was 6, he decided he wanted to stop eating meat because those are animals. And my parents said, okay, you can do that when you're 18, so, because they were worried about the nutrients and everything, and they didn't really know how else to respond to that, which I considered a very responsible parental approach at the time. So then when I turned 18, I was like, actually, when I turned 16, that was, sorry, I said wrong. When you turn 16, you can stop eating meat. So I didn't actually have this personal motivation on my own before. But then when I turned 16, I was like, I remember this rule that I was able to now choose my own food for myself. I was like, okay, maybe it's time to stop eating animal products altogether. And at the time, this was mainly because I think I would say that it was mainly from an empathy point of view, in a sense that I didn't think it was right for people to eat living creatures, and to also from this age, I would say I had this perspective of myself as a consumer supporting these industries. So I didn't want to be a part of that. So yeah, when I was 16, I stopped eating all animal products. But at the time, I didn't yet consider also the other aspects of veganism. So regarding the products that are not food products, which then I did later when I was 18, 19, when I moved to live on my own. I included those aspects as well. But it's an interesting story for me, because the main reason why I started eating plant-based food mainly was mainly because of how I felt about animals, and I felt that it wasn't right, and also had seen some of those videos about the how they kill animals and stuff. But then later, actually, this approach didn't really, it wasn't my main motivation anymore. So with time, and also right now, I see it more as a philosophy. So I wouldn't say that I have the same emotional reaction to the fact that animals are being exploited. I still strongly disagree that this is something that should be supported. But my main idea behind veganism is actually that, from a philosophical point of view, I don't think that it is humans who should decide what happens to other living creatures. I feel like this is also maybe a more general problem of the way that humans approach nature, but I feel like it's a, it's a very arrogant point of view to think that people are the ones that have the mandate to say you're allowed to live and you're not allowed to live when it comes to other living creatures. And the fact that there's this whole industry of animal-based products and food is in a way very bizarre when it comes to when I get to think about that point of view.
Yeah. And do you think, have you ever felt put off by any argument or any approach that comes to veganism, or approach that doesn't feel that right for you?
Yes, I don't like the cube of truth.
Okay.
I don't like them. No. I think it's too traumatizing for random people. So it's for some context, that the cube of truth is where people show videos of the slaughterhouses on the streets, and I believe that many people would be moved by this in the sense that this would impact their choices. But I also think that the cost of that is that a lot of people who are passing by randomly, who might even also already be vegans or already be sensitive to these topics, can get very traumatized by seeing this, and they didn't give consent to see this. And this is what I see as a problem with the cube of truth, that it's not based on the consent of people who are passing by, what they're going to see, what they're going to view, as well as how they're going to be able to talk about their experience and how they're going to be able to process it. I think this is irresponsible. But I also think that there's a lot of focus in the vegan movement about which kind of types of activism are not effective. But I think we're not giving that much emphasis onto the fact that vegan activism so far has been incredibly effective. There are a lot more widespread ideas about veganism. There's a vegan label that is now on a lot of food products, as well as I think everyday people are less prejudiced about it than they were before. And this is the result of activism. This didn't happen on its own, and I think it's a very important thing to also be aware of, because something that I think in all areas of activism we tend to forget very often is how we do actually change the world. How this is something that is bringing about on a, I wouldn't say global scale, but at least Western scale. It's so far it does have effects. So it's now a lot more common to be able to expect vegan food at a certain events, or to be able to talk to your friends about going vegan and not be met with a lot of criticism and ridicule. And this didn't happen on its own. So just a few words for vegan activism. It does work.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There has been many changes in like past 10 years maybe. And I think you already answered a bit to this next question, but can you remember a moment when someone inspired you or deepened your commitment to veganism, or someone who left an impression?
I don't remember a specific person. I have been surrounded in my life with people who have lived vegan or plant-based lifestyles generally from very different contexts. But what I would say is that whenever I talk to someone about this topic, I feel like I become a little bit more grounded in my own values when it comes to that. Even when I'm talking to people who approach veganism in a very different way than I would, or who feel very strongly about things that I don't feel that strongly about, I'm still reminded of the way that I feel about it, which is strengthening actually my commitment to this. But I would say that the main way that I admire veganism as a political movement is that it's a form of lifelong boycott, and I think it's a very very effective way of approaching changing very large systemic problems, because I feel like in this way, like also for example, the main thing that motivates me personally when thinking about these things is the fact that I know that throughout the world there have been slaughterhouses that have been closed, and there have been, I don't know, these big milk productions that don't work anymore because there is less demand, and this is a consequence of people buying less of these products. So even though it feels much bigger than us, we do actually have an impact on these kind of things on an everyday level. And for a while, I used to also present myself as an economical vegan, in the sense that for example, I would maybe buy a leather jacket that was secondhand, but not firsthand, because I didn't want to financially support industries that exploit animals. So I think there's different. It's a very big topic, I would say. Every time I get into contact with either the effects or the reasons for it or the way that people connect about it, I think it strengthens also my commitment to it.
You already said that you have people around you who are also vegan, but how do you see that veganism is perceived in your broader community or social circles?
I would say in my circles there is a very clear distinction between plant-based eating and veganism as a political activist act. So I would say that I have, I haven't really had many people have problems or prejudices or stereotypes about plant-based eating. So about the decision not to eat animal products, I think it's become more or less quite neutral or even sometimes expected from other people. But the usage of the word vegan and also of the statement about going vegan and vegan as a holistic lifestyle, I think this is a little bit more a little bit less neutral for people, because I think that they associate it with the promotion of veganism in an aggressive way, which people can get put off by. But generally, I would say that it's not really something that I have been worried about how I will be perceived because of veganism or anything like that, because it has become more widespread. And I notice also in circles of social activism that it's a lot more common.
And how about the practical view? Is it easy to be vegan, or is it accessible? Is it cheap to buy these products? What do you think?
Well, from my personal experience, so told you that I went vegan when I was 16, but my mother said that, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not going to cook 2 meals every day. So it's like, okay, so then I had to learn how to cook. And of course, I was 16, so I tried to make sure that everything that I had to eat was as cheap as possible. And this is sort of the mindset that I kept also throughout my life. I would say that it is not a more expensive way of eating than eating animal products. I think also animal products generally are heavily subsidized by the government and are still more expensive than vegan foods. It is true that some of the vegetables are getting more expensive, and especially if you want to get more diverse sources of food, it's getting more expensive generally, regardless of which kind of diet you're following. But I would say that generally it is still quite a cheap option depending on how you approach it. Like for example, I'm not that big a fan of very varied foods, honestly. Like I usually eat the same 10 things more or less throughout my whole life. So this is quite easy for me in a sense, like from a personal experience, but I also think that it could be presented in a much easier way to other people than sometimes it is. I notice a lot of people, for example, promoting the use of seitan or of tofu and hummus and things like this, which, for example, in a Slovenian context, those are all very strange foods. It is a thing that people don't know, and that therefore they have maybe some sort of hesitation towards. Whereas actually, what I also found very interesting whenever I was talking to people about considering going vegan, that they would have this image of veganism as something that is completely foreign to their culture, which is not true. So they're also in Slovenian cuisine. There's loads of food that is vegan naturally, but they don't even know it because that's not how they phrase it. So, like if I give an example, the difference between hummus and Ivar is just that Ivar is well known here and hummus is not, and both of them are completely plant-based. And I think that there's also a way of talking about veganism and talking about plant-based food that can be made more accessible if we tailor it more closely to things that people already know. But the general answer to your question is no, I think it is the cheapest way of eating that I've found so far.
Yeah. How about the restaurants? What do you think in Slovenia or Ljubljana? Is it easy to find plant-based options?
I don't have information on this on the last years, but when I was a student, for example, I was always looking for, because in Slovenia there's this coupon system for students where you can get discounts in restaurants. I would always be looking for vegan restaurants that had the cheapest options and such, and there was actually quite a lot of options.
Yeah.
This, I have to say, is in very stark contrast to Croatia, where I grew up, where there is more or less nothing. I would usually find my way by combining side dishes in restaurants. They would have a side dish of vegetables, and side dish of potatoes, and a side dish of something else, and then that would be my meal.
Yeah.
In Slovenia, I think there is a lot more options. There's options also. There's a lot of vegan-specific restaurants or even vegan vegetarian. And I've noticed also in more general restaurants that there are options to choose from.
And for the last question, I would ask you, if someone close to you or your friend would consider going vegan, what do you think would be helpful for them, or what was helpful for you when you were starting this diet or lifestyle?
I think this depends a lot on the values of the person. So what is going to stick with them and what isn't. I think maybe one horizontal priority that I would mention here is what I said before about focusing on what is already familiar, what they're already doing. So to give examples, if they're already eating, for example, oatmeal with apples for breakfast, that is already vegan. To just start naming this in this way, that it doesn't feel like a big change. This I think would be beneficial to everyone thinking about making changes, that it doesn't actually feel like such a big step. But yeah, other than that, there are a lot of different arguments about why veganism could be helpful to anyone. For me personally, as I said, I have this very strong philosophy about the role that humans play in the world, and how we don't have the right to decide that animals are made for us. But also, like over the years, I have come across a lot of different arguments that I think could be adapted according to the person that you're speaking to. Like, even it's a very weird example from my perspective, but one of my friends also told me that there's a statement in the Old Testament of the Bible. It says that God created humans, and then God created animals for their company and plants for food. So this is also something that, even if I'm talking to someone religious, this could somehow be connected in a way that animals could be company and not food. But generally, I think that lately the climate impact of it has become more and more widespread. And I think also more people are motivated to make even small changes just to be more climate sensitive and contribute to climate justice a bit more. And I think this is mainly because the climate justice movement has very successfully sold the idea that we as consumers have power, which I think wasn't that clear before. I think before there were a lot of, but my one action is not going to make a difference, which I think with climate justice we've sort of collectively understood that it does make a difference. And I think from this perspective, um, it's a good argument to use also because, for example, if you go from the perspective of empathy, if there's someone that doesn't have a strong emotional reaction to slaughterhouses, for example, this is probably not going to change. So it might not be a sensible argument for everyone, whereas the climate effects is more about the consequences. So even if you go vegan for a different reason, even if you go vegan just because your friend went vegan and you don't know what else to do, or just it's something that everyone around you is doing, it is still going to have a positive effect on the climate. And I think this is something that everyone likes to hear about how their actions are impacting positively on the world. So this for me, I would say, is the go-to philosophy to go with. But as I said, I think it could be adapted to every person's values, because also the idea of not exploiting animals for our foods, and especially for our leisure and like unnecessary things and unnecessary also food, like for example, most of the dairy products are in processed food. It's not even in the basic necessities of food. I think it's something that is worth talking about more, and it's worth not really convincing people, because I don't think this approach is very effective, but it's worth talking about how it impacts the individuals, but also more generally the society.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.